Georgia's history is full of courage and sacrifice, but not all of it made the textbooks. Today, we're bringing 12 forgotten heroes back to life, giving their stories the spotlight they've always deserved. Number 1. James Ogulthorp. James wasn't just another British leader, he was a man with a bold dream. In the early 1700s, he set out to build a new kind of colony in America, one that gave people a second chance. Instead of filling it with the wealthy or powerful, he wanted Georgia to be a place where poor people and former prisoners could start over. In 1733, he founded Savannah, the first city in what would become Georgia. But starting a colony wasn't easy. James faced threats from nearby Spanish forces in Florida and had to protect his settlers from danger. He helped design forts and even led soldiers in battle. One of his biggest victories came in 1742 when he stopped a Spanish invasion during the Battle of Bloody Marsh. His smart planning and leadership saved the colony from being destroyed. James also cared deeply about doing things differently. He banned slavery in early Georgia and tried to create fair laws. He built relationships with local Native American leaders and worked hard to keep peace. His goal wasn't just to grow land, it was to build a community with justice and opportunity. Today, most people know the name Georgia, but not enough remember the man who helped it begin. James's courage, kindness, and strong beliefs turned an empty stretch of land into a lasting home. He wasn't just a founder, he was a fighter for fairness who left a mark that still matters. Number 2. Tommoici. When the settlers first arrived in Georgia, they met someone who would change everything. Chief Tommoici of the Yamacraw people. Instead of pushing them away, Tommoici welcomed James and helped the newcomers find a place to live along the river. Without him, Savannah might never have survived. Tommoici didn't just offer land, he offered friendship. He became a strong voice for peace between the settlers and native tribes. He believed that by working together, both sides could share the land without fighting. His wise guidance helped prevent early battles and allowed Georgia to grow safely. In 1734, Tommoici even traveled across the ocean to visit England. There, he met the king and spoke about his people. He wore traditional clothing and amazed crowds with his calm strength and thoughtful words. His journey showed the world that native leaders were just as smart and powerful as any European ruler. Tommoici died in 1739, and the settlers honored him with a special grave in Savannah's central square. They buried him with military honors, a rare sign of respect for a native leader. His story reminds us that Georgia was not built by settlers alone. It was built through trust, teamwork, and the leadership of a man who believed in peace. Number 3. Mary Musgrove. Mary Musgrove was born with 1 foot in 2 worlds. Her father was English and her mother was Creek, and that unique background gave her a powerful gift, the ability to understand and speak for both cultures. When James came to Georgia to build a new colony, he turned to Mary Musgrove to help him communicate with local native leaders. She became his main interpreter and trusted partner. Mary didn't just translate words, she helped keep peace. Through her work, she helped James and the Creek Nation build a strong alliance. She negotiated land agreements, explained traditions, and cleared up misunderstandings before they became problems. Her role was so important that many believed Georgia wouldn't have survived without her. But her work wasn't always easy. Mary had to fight to be recognized and respected, especially in a time when women, especially Native women, were rarely given power. She ran trading posts, worked as a diplomat, and even stood up to government officials when they tried to ignore her. She never gave up on her right to be heard. Mary Musgrove's legacy reminds us that building a colony was more than battles and laws. It also took understanding, respect, and strong women who stood between two worlds. She wasn't just a helper, she was a leader. Number 4, Nancy Hart. Nancy Hart was no ordinary settler. Living in the wild backwoods of Georgia during the Revolutionary War, she became a legend for her fearless defense of her home and her country. When British soldiers came through her land, Nancy didn't hide. She took matters into her own hands. The most famous story tells how a group of loyalist soldiers forced their way into her cabin and demanded food. Nancy served them, all while secretly hiding their equipment. Once their weapons were out of reach, she grabbed one. She captured them and gave them to local patriots. But Nancy didn't stop there. She also worked as a spy, disguising herself to sneak into British camps and gather information. She knew the land, the people, and how to stay hidden, skills that made her one of Georgia's most valuable patriots. She fought with brains and bravery. Long after the war, people remembered her stories. Even today, Hart County, Georgia, is named in her honor, the only county in the state named after a woman. Nancy Hart showed that heroes come in all shapes, sizes, and roles. She protected her family, defended her land, and proved that courage lives in the heart of every true patriot. Number 5, Elijah Clark. Elijah Clark wasn't a general in a fancy uniform. He was a tough, determined frontiersman who rose to fame during the American Revolution. While British forces took control of much of Georgia, Clark led a fearless band of militiamen through forests, hills, and swamps to fight back. His most famous moment came at the Battle of Kettle Creek in 1779, where his outnumbered troops defeated the British and brought hope to Georgia patriots. Clark didn't rely on big armies or grand tactics. Instead, he used guerrilla warfare, striking fast and fading into the wilderness. He and his men protected farms and towns, always staying one step ahead of the enemy. Even when wounded, Clark refused to back down. His spirit and grit made him a symbol of Georgia's will to resist. After the war, he continued serving his community. Clark helped defend new settlements and played a role in Georgia's early growth. He was admired not just as a soldier, but as a leader who stood with everyday people. His legacy lives on in Clark County, named to honor his lasting contributions to the state. Though he's not always remembered today, Elijah Clark was one of Georgia's strongest defenders. He didn't fight for glory. He fought for freedom, and thanks to him, Georgia held its ground when the fight for independence seemed nearly lost. Number 6, Austin Dabney. Austin Dabney's story is one of courage rising above limits. Born into slavery in Georgia, he stepped forward to take his enslaver's place in the Army during the Revolutionary War. Fighting side by side with Patriot soldiers, Dabney showed extraordinary bravery, especially at Kettle Creek, where he was hit while helping save a fellow soldier on the battlefield. His sacrifice made history. After the war, Georgia did something almost unheard of at the time. It freed Dabney, gave him land, and paid him a pension, recognition usually reserved for white soldiers. He used those resources to live independently and support those around him. His story stood out because it proved that character, not color, defined a true patriot. Dabney never forgot the people he served with. He became close friends with the family of the man he rescued, and even helped send their son to school. He was known in his community as wise and generous, someone who had earned his respect, not by birth, but through courage and loyalty in action. Austin Dabney's life is a powerful reminder that real heroes often come from unexpected places. He proved that even in a divided time, one man's bravery could break barriers and earn a place in Georgia's story of freedom. Number 7. Casemir Pilaski. Casemir Pilaski came to America from Poland, not for fame or fortune, but to fight for liberty. A skilled cavalry officer, he had already battled against kings in Europe. When he heard the colonies needed help, he crossed the ocean to join the American Revolution. He quickly made a name for himself by leading brave charges on horseback and earning the title Father of the American Cavalry. Pilaski's final and most famous battle took place right in Savannah, Georgia. In 1779, during the Siege of Savannah, he led a daring attack to push the British out of the city. As cannons roared and smoke filled the air, Pilaski charged forward on horseback to inspire his troops. He was hit and died a few days later from his wounds. His sacrifice left a deep mark. Though the battle was lost, Pilaski's courage became legend. The people of Savannah honored him with monuments, and Fort Pilaski, near the Georgia coast, still bears his name today. He remains one of the few foreign leaders who gave his life for America's freedom. Casemir Pilaski may have been born far from Georgia, but his final moments were spent fighting for its future. His bravery at Savannah proved that the cause of liberty could unite people across oceans, and that true heroes sometimes come from beyond our borders. Number 8. James Jackson. James Jackson was a young Revolutionary War veteran who didn't stop serving after the fighting ended. In the early years of Georgia's statehood, he rose quickly in politics. But what made Jackson truly stand out was his fight against one of the biggest scandals in American history, the Yazoo land fraud. In 1795, corrupt lawmakers secretly sold millions of acres of Georgia land to speculators for dirt-cheap prices. When the public found out, there was outrage, but few were willing to challenge the powerful men behind the deal. Jackson did. He resigned from the U.S. Senate so he could return to Georgia and take the fight head-on. He helped lead a movement that overturned the land sale, burned the original act in front of the Capitol, and restored faith in the state government. Jackson's courage to stand up to greed and do what was right earned him the trust of the people. He later became governor of Georgia, continuing to serve with fairness and strength. James Jackson showed that patriotism didn't end with the war. He fought for Georgia's future by standing up to corruption and defending the people's trust. His legacy reminds us that true heroes don't just fight on battlefields, they fight for justice in everyday life. Number 9. Henry McNeel Turner. Henry McNeel Turner was a man who believed in the power of words and action. Born free in South Carolina, he moved to Georgia and quickly rose to become one of the most powerful black voices during the years after the Civil War. As a minister, he inspired people from the pulpit. As a politician, he made history, becoming one of the first African Americans elected to Georgia's state legislature in 1868. But Turner's time in office wasn't easy. After he and other black lawmakers were elected, white officials tried to force them out. Turner didn't stay silent. He stood up in the Georgia House and delivered a bold speech, defending his right to serve and calling out injustice. Even though he was removed, his words were remembered across the country. Turner didn't stop fighting. He became a bishop in the African Methodist Church and spent the rest of his life pushing for equality and pride in black identity. He built churches, opened schools, and even supported the idea that African Americans could one day return to Africa if the U.S. failed to offer justice. Henry McNeel Turner was a fighter for freedom, not just on paper, but in people's hearts. He believed that every person had a right to speak, to lead, and to dream big. He left a legacy of strength and courage that still inspires Georgia and the nation today. Number 10. Lucy Craft Laney. Laney was born in Georgia just before the Civil War, and though she was the daughter of formerly enslaved parents, she grew up with one powerful goal: to bring education to children who had none. She studied hard and became a teacher, and in 1883 she opened a school for black students in Augusta, starting with just 6 children in a church basement. Her school grew quickly. Lucy believed in teaching not just reading and writing, but also dignity, discipline, and pride. She called her school the Haynes Normal and Industrial Institute, and it became one of the most respected institutions for African American students in the South. She even started the first black kindergarten and the first nurse training program for black women in Georgia. Lucy didn't do it for fame. She raised money, taught classes, and mentored students all at once. Her students often said she felt more like a second mother than a teacher. Even when times were hard and money was tight, she never gave up on her mission to change lives through education. Today, Lucy Craft Laney is remembered as one of Georgia's greatest educators. Her life shows that true heroes don't always wear uniforms. They sometimes carry books and chalk. She opened the door for thousands of young minds and proved that knowledge is a power no one can take away. Number 11. Henry Oen Flipper. Henry Flipper was born into slavery in Thomasville, Georgia, but he didn't let that define his future. After the Civil War, he worked hard to get an education and eventually earned a spot at West Point Military Academy, one of the toughest and most respected schools in the country. In 1877, he made history by becoming the first African American to graduate from West Point. His time there wasn't easy. He faced racism from classmates and was often left out of activities. But Flipper kept his focus, worked harder than anyone, and proved he belonged. When he graduated, he became an officer in the U.S. Army, something that had never been done by a black American before. He was assigned to serve with the Buffalo Soldiers out west. Despite his success, Flipper's military career was cut short when he was accused of misconduct. Though many believed the charges were unfair and based on race, he was dismissed. But Flipper didn't let that stop him. He went on to become a skilled engineer, surveyor, and writer. He worked for the U.S. government and even helped in land development across the West. Years later, the Army finally cleared his name. Today, Henry Flipper is remembered not just for being first, but for being fearless, determined, and dignified. He opened a door that many would walk through after him, showing that no dream is too big if you believe in yourself. Number 12. Eugene Bullard. Eugene Bullard was born in Columbus, Georgia, the son of a former slave and an indigenous Creek woman. As a boy, he dreamed of a world where he could be judged by his heart, not his skin. So at just 11 years old, he ran away and eventually made his way to Europe, where he found a new life filled with both adventure and history-making moments. When World War I broke out, Bullard joined the French Foreign Legion and quickly proved his bravery. He fought in the trenches and was wounded, but instead of going home, he trained as a pilot, something that no black man had ever done in combat. In 1917, he flew missions for France, becoming the first black fighter pilot in history. Bullard flew more than 20 combat missions and was praised for his skill and courage. After the war, he stayed in France and opened a jazz club where he met celebrities and remained a respected figure. But when World War II came, Bullard fought again, this time as a spy for the French resistance. He later returned to the United States, but his heroism was largely forgotten. It wasn't until years after his death that the U.S. finally honored Eugene Bullard for his service. Today, he's remembered as a man who refused to be limited by the world around him. From the skies of France to the streets of Georgia, his story reminds us that bravery knows no boundaries. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.